Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay everyone, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon Central European Time, which means it's also time for Brightvision's webinar together with Dr. Tony Alessandra, who is joining us from, I think, a very early morning on the American West Coast. Good morning, Tony. Are you with us here?
I am here, and it is 7 a.m.
Wonderful. Thank you for getting up early to speak with the Nordic audience we have here for you today.
Great. Yeah, and listen, if you start hearing me snore, just yell, and it'll wake me up. Okay?
Yeah, we promise, Tony. Don't worry. So I'm going to let you prepare your PowerPoint for a minute or two here while I give everyone a brief introduction for today. So you do that, and for everyone listening, my name is Rickard Christopherson, and I work as a consultant manager here at Brightvision. And for those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a lead generation agency focused on helping IT and technology companies in the Nordics with their inbound and outbound sales and marketing. So everything basically from digital and social marketing all the way to teleprospecting and event planning in Sweden, Norway, Finland and Denmark. And what we try to do at Brightvision is that we try to do webinars around interesting subjects related to sales and marketing and also bring in expert speakers whenever we can. And I first listened to Dr. Tony a few months ago at HubSpot's event called Inbound that they have every year in Boston in the United States. And I was very impressed by his speech on how to create customers for life. And it's that same presentation that I'm now excited to see share with our Nordic audience today. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar or any comments on things, you can ask them in the Q&A box that you have in your GoToWebinar dashboard to the right of your screen, I think, and I will call them out to Tony if appropriate. Otherwise, I will leave them until a Q&A session after the presentation that I think will go on for 30-40 minutes. And I can see that there are still people dropping in here to the webinar, and if anyone were to join late, I can let you all know that you will receive a recorded version of the webinar afterwards. I know a lot of people have asked for that when they have signed up, so don't worry about that. You will all receive a copy of it. And I think that's everything from me. So Tony, as I said, people are dropping in, but I think we're good to go. We have some people listening from 4 o'clock sharp, so we shouldn't let them wait anymore. Are you ready to go with your presentation?
Absolutely.
Great.
Okay, so
I think I can see it. I think I can see it on my screen here, Tony. And if there's anyone in the audience who cannot see Tony's screen where it says how to create customers for life right now, throw that into the text box, the chat box, to let us know. Otherwise, I think I can hand it over to you now, Tony, and we can start listening.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Rickard. And for anybody after the presentation that would like to get in touch with me for whatever reason, I put both my phone number, which I'm in California, and my email address, which is drtony, Dr. Tony, at assessments24x7.com. So I learned many years ago that there is a big difference between simply making a sale and creating a customer for life. Now, I learned that in my first sales job while I was working my way through college, Notre Dame University. Each summer, I would be out selling full-time, selling what we call door-to-door, trying to earn money for my university tuition, etc. Now, we were taught back then simply how to make sales. The three big things that we were taught in sales training, now this was back in 1966, 67, 68, we were taught three major things. Number one, how to give a mesmerizing, almost hypnotizing sales pitch. Number two, we were taught 101 ways to overcome objections. And number 3, we were taught the 25 power closing techniques. I really enjoyed that just because of the names of the closing techniques. The tie-down close, the sharp angle close, the mother-in-law close, the half Nelson close. We were taught all selling skills to use against the customer, simply to make a sale and get out. In fact, we were taught as soon as you make the sale, get out of a person's home before they change their mind. The product, by the way, that I was selling was cookware, china, crystal, cutlery, mainly to single women between the ages of 18 and 21 who were hopefully buying it. We used to call it buying it for their hope chest, for when they got married, so that they would have all their cooking and serving utensils. But anyway, I realized that I was simply making sales. I really didn't get much repeat business. I wasn't getting referrals. I realized after a while that people were not swearing by me, they were swearing at me. And I started looking for another approach to selling that would make me feel better about what I was doing, and obviously make my customers appreciate and respect what I was doing, and hopefully get me some repeat business and referrals. So as I was looking for another approach to selling, I realized that anybody in the business of getting and or keeping customers has to go through 4 basic stairs before they get to the ultimate of customer loyalty. Now, I call it the stairs of customer loyalty. Let me just see if I can move this. Doesn't seem like my slides are. Let me just get down here. There we go. So the stairs of customer loyalty. There are 4 basic stairs. The first one is finding prospects, people who are not using your product right now. In this particular case, back then it was, call on anybody and everybody, but that was a hopeless situation. When we prospect, we want to try to prospect for people who have the highest probability of potentially buying from us. So I'm sure most people are familiar with what we call the Pareto's principle. Pareto was an Italian statistician. He's the one who came up with the 80-20 rule, or some people call it the 20-80 rule. And that is 20% of your customers give you 80% of your revenue, or better yet, 20% of your customers give you 80% of your profitability. We call those our A prospects. I know a lot of people use, ABC type prospecting or categorization of clients. The top 20% would be A prospects, the middle 60% would be B, and the bottom 20% would be C. So what I propose here when it comes to prospecting is to go back into your client base. Look at all of your clients and say, okay, of my clients, which clients would I categorize as A clients in the top 20%? And once I look at this list of my top 20%, what do they have in common? Is there anything they have in common where I can categorize them so that once I have this picture of what a top 20% client would be, then I can go out prospecting for people or companies that fit the profile of my top 20%. So basically, when it comes to prospecting, to do it correctly, I want to try to focus initially on only prospecting for A prospects. And when I run out of A prospects, if I ever do, then go down to B prospects, etc., instead of just randomly calling on prospects. So the next stair, once I have a good prospect, the next stair is to actually make the sale. So let's go to that. And the initial sale, when I was selling, back in the 60s and early 70s, we were basically taught you go in, you do just a little bit of socializing, or what we used to call small talk, just to break the ice, and then really get right into our sales pitch, overcome objections if there are any, and then close, close, close until the person buys or until they kick you out. But of course, that really isn't the way that you should be selling. If I'm selling on to an A prospect, I really want to do a full needs analysis. I really want to find out if they have problems, if there are opportunities for my product solution. I want to do a full needs analysis and then match my solution to the customer needs. Because if you can match your solutions to customer needs, that's where you're actually selling value. You're selling something important to the customer. So there's the initial sale. Now, we go beyond that, and the next step is, once we have initial sales, we want to try to create repeat customers. And I'm sure all of you have heard the term that we need to exceed customer expectations. I mean, we have heard that over and over and over again, exceed the customer's expectations. But very few companies and very few people, speakers like me, tell you how to consistently exceed customer expectations. When you exceed expectations, you create what I call a moment of magic for the customer. When you fall short of expectations, you create what I call a moment of misery. And this isn't rocket science. We want to create a lot more moments of magic and a lot fewer moments of misery. But we need to exceed the customer's expectations. Whatever reason they had for buying your product or service, you want to make sure that that has, at the minimum, you have met their expectation, and ideally you have exceeded it. Now, many companies, many salespeople feel that if they can get to this third stair, they have actually made it. I'm there. Because they have repeat customers, they're out there doing their prospecting correctly, they're making sales correctly, they have repeat customers, and I have to agree that if a salesperson or a company can get to this third level, they are doing well. But there is a fourth level that is very important, and the fourth level is what we call creating, now the term I use is creating apostles. I use the term apostle. You can call them a business advocate, a raving fan, whatever you want to call this person. So, we have repeat customers, but not every repeat customer can be an apostle or a raving fan, because an apostle is out there in the marketplace selling for you. They're preaching the gospel, so to speak, about you, your company, your products, your services. So this is where we want to get. I always ask audiences, what do you think, for you, what do you think the value of an apostle is? And every single time, without fail, somebody says the value of an apostle is priceless. And then I ask them, well, if you feel that an apostle is priceless, how many of you actually have a written action plan of how you will create more apostles? And rarely do I ever get somebody raising their hand. People value apostles. They feel that they're priceless, but they don't really have a proactive plan for creating apostles. So, I tell them that my goal is to have them double the number of apostles each and every year. Of course, when you have too many apostles, it's difficult to double them, but still, what I want to do is share with you a strategy for creating more business advocates, raving fans, apostles. It's a very simple process. Very, very few people do it, but I have to tell you, of all the things that I preach when it comes to effective sales and creating customers for life, this is one of the most effective tools. There's 3 steps. Step number, oh, by the way, first let's, before we get to the 3 steps, how do you determine whether you have somebody who is just a good customer versus an apostle or raving fan? And you can ask them this simple question. On a scale from 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend me to a colleague? If they rate you a 9 or a 10, you can say that they are an apostle. 7 or 8, they're passively satisfied. Now, when I say passively satisfied, this is a situation where if you do well, they'll stay passively satisfied. If you do great, you may move them up to a 9 or a 10 and become an apostle. And if you fall short, they may move below a 7 into what we call a detractor. A detractor actually could be somebody out there in the marketplace talking badly about you, which is not what you want. So this, this question, the author calls it the ultimate question. You can go on to Amazon or whatever search company you use and look for the book, The Ultimate Question. And this is the ultimate question in terms of customer satisfaction. On a scale from 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend me to a colleague, to a friend, to a relative, whatever, and see what number they give you. What we want to do is get as many 9s or 10s as possible. Now, once we have identified our actual apostles, now we want to go into the 3-step process. So step 1, very simple, we want to write down the names of our apostles, our business advocates. Write them down. Again, from the previous slide, anybody who rated you a 9 or a 10, we want to put their names here in number 1. Now, number 2, this is the more difficult step. This is a step where you actually have to say, okay, looking at this list of apostles in number 1, what do I do with them that I don't do with my other customers, my other clients? Or what do I do with them that I do with my other customers, but I do more of it and do it better? So, you know, write things down here. Now, here's the key. Do not write down something that is so general, like I give them better service. What does that mean? Whatever we write down in number 2 here, look at it this way. If somebody else looked at what you write down in number 2, could they exactly duplicate it? So if you put down, I give them better service, that's open to interpretation. Different people can deliver better service in a variety of different ways. I want to know specifically how you deliver better service. Or another thing that I hear a lot of people come up with, well, I return their calls promptly. But what is promptly? Promptly to one person could be 5 minutes or immediately, and to another person could be within 24 hours. So let's state it very specifically. If you're going to say, I return their calls promptly, don't say it that way. Say, I return their calls within 1 hour or 30 minutes or whatever. So that's what we want to do here, as specific as possible. I will tell you one thing that people do not do. They do not say, I give my apostles a better price or a better product. Rarely, if ever, do I see that. Almost 100% of the time, what I hear is something to do with how you treat them. All right, so that's number 2. Number 3, step 3, is what we want to do is turn some of our current customers who are not apostles into business advocates or apostles. So what we want to do here is identify or write down twice as many customers that we want to target and turn into apostles as we currently have apostles. So for instance, in number 1, let's say you had 4 names who are business advocates in number 1. In number 3, we want to look at our current customers who are good customers but not yet apostles, and we want to write down 8 names. If we have 4 names in number 1, we're going to write down 8 names in number 3. If we have 2 names in number 1, we're going to write down 4 names in number 3, and so on. 3 names in number 1, 6 names in number 3. So hopefully everybody is familiar with that. So write down twice as many names here. And then what we want to do, very specifically, over the next 12 months, we want to do the activities in number 2 that we wrote down with the customers in number 3. Let me repeat that. Whatever specific behaviors and actions we wrote down in number 2. Now, number 2 is what you do with your current apostles that you might not do with your other customers, or you do it better with apostles than other customers. And what I want to do is, with the names that I wrote down, targeted customers that I want to convert to apostles, I want to specifically, over the next 12 months, proactively do the behaviors in number 2 with the people whose names I wrote down in number 3. And I can tell you from experience, with thousands upon thousands of customers, that over the next 12 months, you will convert approximately 50% of the people in number 3 into business advocates within 12 months. So in other words, if you have 3 current apostles in number 1, you write down 6 names of targeted customers that you want to convert into apostles in number 3. Over the next 12 months, you do the behaviors in number 2 with the people in number 3. You will convert 3 of those customers. If you wrote down 6 names, you'd convert 50% of them. And basically what you're doing, because you're writing down twice as many customers in number 3 as you have in number 1, and you're converting 50% of them, you're doubling your number of apostles each and every year. So year 1, let's say we have 3 apostles in number 1. We write down 6 names in number 3, convert 3 of them. So in year 2, we're going to now have 6 names in number 1. We're going to write down the names of 12 people in number 3, convert 6 of them. So in year 2, at the end of year 2, we're going to have 12 current business advocates, and so on. So that's really what we want to do to create more apostles. Very crucial. So let's move on and talk a little bit about the customer needs analysis. It is my opinion that in selling, as in medicine, prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. What we want to do is find out what the customer values versus what they need. Now, a lot of people will tell you, I want this, I want that, because they talk to other people, you know, they read things, and they tell you what they think they want as opposed to what they really need. When you do a good needs analysis, what you're really doing is you're uncovering problems and opportunities. Problems that you can help the customer solve, and opportunities that you can help the customer seize. That's the key. A quote from Daniel Burrus in his book Techno Trends: "It's a mistake to assume that people know what they might want, because without an understanding of what's possible, they will either ask for too little, and I'm going to add, maybe not the right thing." So we really want to make sure that we do a good needs analysis. So in terms of needs analysis categories, I want to find out their current situation versus their desired situation. In other words, what are they doing now, and what should they be doing, or what would they like to be doing? Because the difference between what they're doing now and what they should be doing is the need gap. The bigger the need gap, more likely the person's going to take action to close it. In other words, purchase. The smaller the need gap, at least in the eyes of the customer, the less likely they're going to make a change. So we really want to find out what that need gap is. I want to find out what their relevant past experiences are with our product, with our company, with our competitors' products and companies, etc. What's their past experiences? How about their decision makers? If you're talking to one person, I want to find out with that one person, in addition to yourself, who else may be involved in making this decision, and how is a decision like this made in your company. That's the decision process. I want to find out my competitive exposure. Are they just talking to us, or are they shopping and talking to several customers? And here's where it's important that if they are shopping or there's competition with us, I want to know how I stack up against the competition. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. I want to know what their success criteria is. In other words, their expectations. If I said to a customer, look, let's make believe we're sitting down 6 months from now after you've made the decision to do business with us, and you tell me making that decision to purchase your product or service was one of the better decisions I have made. I ask the customer, what would have to happen during that 6-month period for you to say that to me, that making the decision to do business with me was one of the better decisions you've made? That is their success criteria, how they're going to judge or measure whether your solution met or exceeded their expectations. I also want to find out what their time and budget constraints are. Very crucial. Now, some general questions. I don't like to tell you specific questions to ask, but here's some questions that might be good. For instance, what are your objectives? Why do customers do business? Or why do you do business with one company versus another? This is general customer analysis. What changes are occurring with your customers or in the marketplace that might impact whether or not they do business with you? What elements of our products or services do customers value most, and why? Why are customers dissatisfied with either our product or competitors' products, or whatever they're doing right now, and what's the severity of the problem? What are the unmet needs that customers can identify, and do they represent leverage points for us or our competitors? And what opportunities for us or our competitors are being missed? So these are crucial areas that I would like to explore in a customer needs analysis. When we're finished with doing our needs analysis, what we want to do is summarize and prioritize the needs of the customer, the needs that we just uncovered, before we move into our solution. So this is sort of a bridge. The summarization and prioritization of needs is a bridge between the needs analysis and the presentation of solutions. It should be part of every single presentation. And this is where we help the customer clarify and prioritize their problems, their needs, and their opportunities before we get into the presentation process. And what it is, it's an opportunity for the customer to give us feedback, to agree with what we perceive their needs and problems and opportunities are. It's a very important process, a very important bridge. Now, what we want to try to do here is to differentiate our solutions from our competitors, because differentiated products and experiences, all right, even the purchasing experience, always command a premium price. And it is my contention that any product can be differentiated. When I was growing up, one of the most popular coffees that people would buy is Maxwell House coffee. But today, one of the most popular coffees is Starbucks. And one gourmet Starbucks coffees cost as much as an entire can of Maxwell House coffee. So Starbucks redefined the value of coffee as opposed to just being coffee grounds. I think one of the greatest differentiators of a product is water. You can have, these bottles of water here you can buy in a store for 10 cents a bottle, and then there is Fiji water that one single bottle costs more than potentially a 24-pack of, almost unbranded water. So any product can be differentiated. So what you want to do is to try to find out how your product can be differentiated from the competition. In other words, what is your competitive advantage? Do you have a uniqueness? A uniqueness is something that you have in your product that your competitors do not have, they cannot match, and it's valued by the customer, okay? So that's what we want to do, is establish a competitive advantage. An advantage is something that you have, your competitors have, but you can prove yours is better and the customers value it. And of course, a disadvantage is something your competitors have, you don't, and the customers value what the competition has, that disadvantage. So what we want to do is, how do we differentiate ourselves from our competitors? This is a great exercise that you can do as a company with your sales and marketing people. Is the column, of course we have competitor A, B, C, D. We pick our biggest competitors, and then we write down what are our advantages compared to competitor A, B, C, and D, because it could be different, and then what are our disadvantages. Once we know our advantages, we can actually highlight our advantages. If a customer is shopping or comparing us to competitor A, B, C, whatever, if we know our advantages compared to each competitor, we can highlight those during our presentation. And of course, if we know our disadvantages, we know that a disadvantage to a competitor, again, if a customer is shopping, a disadvantage may come up in the form of an objection or a concern or a question. And if we know in advance what that might be, we can actually prepare good answers to any disadvantage that might come up. So it's important that we go through this exercise, and this is not a one-time exercise. It's not an exercise that we do once and that's it. That's like saying that when we build our product or service, we never change it whatsoever. We never change anything around it. We do, and so do the competitors. So this is an exercise that at the minimum should be done once a year, and ideally should be done once a quarter. Now, once we go through our needs analysis and our solution process, we want to ask some feedback questions to the customer. How do you see our solution fitting your needs? All right, and these are open-ended questions that allow the customer to elaborate. It's not just a single yes or no. What other advantages do you see in our product that I have not mentioned? How closely does our solution fit your budget or your timeline? How will you determine the success of our solution? You know, again, 3 months, 6 months down the road, how will you determine whether or not this solution was a big success or not? How well does our solution address the needs and the goals that you expressed when we were doing our needs analysis? And what needs do you see that I may have missed? All right, these are all open-ended questions that are absolutely crucial. Now, let me just talk a little bit about after the sale. There's a whole concept of penetrating customer accounts, where we want to sell more of the same product. We call that reselling. We want to sell related products, which is cross-selling. And we want to sell upgraded products. You know, maybe let's take a computer as an example, or even an iPhone, a product where they buy one level and you upgrade them to a better level. The key here is that the more products or services that are used by your customers, the more client retention and share of their wallet that you have. Very crucial. Now, let's talk a little bit about managing the relationship. I think it is important to understand that people do business with people they like and trust. So it's important to build that likability and that trust with your customers. And a couple of ways to do that is simply making sure that you increase the quantity of your communication with your customers. Now, it's interesting, a study that was done years ago, they asked the salespeople who had lost an account, they asked them, why do you think you lost that account? And about 3/4 of all salespeople would say it was because either the competitor that I lost the account to, the competitor had either a better product or a lower price. Well, then they went and asked the customers why they left a particular salesperson, and the customer said it was because a lack of contact. You know, they never contacted me, and the only time they contacted me is when they wanted to sell something. So what we need to do is make sure that we increase the quantity of our communication and the quality of our communication. What I'm saying here is, let's be in touch with our customers more frequently and make it a quality contact. And by the way, it doesn't have to be when we contact them. It doesn't have to be, I'm trying to sell you another product, upsell, cross-sell, whatever it is. That's not what I'm trying to do. Maybe you can help the customer in their business, selling to their customers, or if you know things personal about the customer, wishing them a happy anniversary or a happy birthday, or if they're into sports or there are particular topics that they're interested in, we can send them articles that are of interest to them outside of business. It's just improving the quantity and the quality of our communication with our customers. Now, if we can do that, what we are doing is we're exceeding expectations. This is the key: exceed expectations. And in order to do that, you really need to do three things. Number one, you need to clearly identify what the customer's expectations are. How could you possibly exceed a customer's expectations unless you know what they are? If you don't know what a customer's expectations are, you're literally shooting in the dark. You don't know where the target is. So customer by customer, we want to clearly identify what their expectations are in doing business with us or in purchasing our products or services. Second, we want to manage the expectations. Expectations that are too low. Now, we may think that's good, but if they're too low, any of our low-cost, low-quality competitors can exceed too low expectations. But we also want to manage expectations that are too high, because if they're too high and they're too unrealistic, as good as we may be, we might not be able to exceed unrealistically high expectations. So it's important that once we identify a customer's expectations, we manage them so that they're not too low or not too high, and then we want to monitor how well we're doing. And this is where we are staying in touch. This gets back to the quantity and quality of our communications with our customers. We want to identify, manage, and monitor expectations. I have a little example here of a red phone. One of my customers years ago, they had a restaurant chain, a fast food restaurant chain, where they got a lot of customer complaints because of poor service and unresponsive employees. So a new CEO was brought in. The CEO installed a red telephone on the order counter of every fast food restaurant, and there was a sign above the red phone that said, "Dear customer, if you have a problem at this restaurant that has not been resolved to your satisfaction, simply pick up the red phone, and the president, I will resolve your problem." Well, 2 weeks after all the phones were installed, not a single call went through to the CEO, so he thought it was a telephone installation problem. They weren't working, but when he dug deeper, he found out that the phones were working. But here's what was happening. If you were the manager of that restaurant and you saw a customer going to reach for that red phone, what would you do? I mean, they were jumping over the counter trying to help the customers to prevent the customer from picking up that red phone. That is the key. What we want to do is create more moments of magic and less moments of misery. That's how you exceed expectations. You always look for ways to identify, manage, and monitor the customer expectations so that we can create moments of magic and eliminate moments of misery. So, Ricard, you asked me to do about 40 minutes. There's 40 minutes. We are done with the slides. Let me go back to slide 1, and put back my my information here.
Wonderful. So thank you very much for that, Tony. It's the second time I'm seeing your presentation, and it's as good as the first time. I think it's, you know, today we see a lot of the focus in sales and marketing to of course try to bring in new clients. So it's refreshing in a way to see the simplicity in your advice, to look at, okay, which are our best clients, which are our apostles, and how did they become our apostles, and how can we duplicate that? It's a really great message that I think many of also the very large companies listening today should consider doing more in their sales work, because it seems like a very good way of thinking about your clients and how to make them happier.
Well, thank you. Did we get any questions during the presentation? I'm more than happy to answer.
Not throughout the presentation, so I'm gonna check to see if anything drops in here. And I also know that we're getting close to 5 o'clock in the afternoon here, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about us in Sweden over the recent months in the States, Tony. One thing that's true about us is that we like to close up shop around this time, so I think many people will be dropping out rather soon. But let's see here. There's a question coming in now asking if there's a difference between business to business versus business to consumer in terms of what you've been speaking about today. Could you answer that one in a couple of minutes, Tony?
Sure, yeah. I would say there absolutely is no difference between the two. And I think if there was any difference, I think what I was talking about today is much more important for business to business. You know, if I had to differentiate between business to business, business to consumer, it really, business to business, this is crucial. But all of the concepts that I've talked about apply to both business to business, business to consumer. I would say, Ricard, I have probably given about 2,500 or more of these speeches to business companies and business to consumer companies, and they all find incredible value in the ideas. So both would be appropriate. And I do want to add, I know again we're getting close to 5 p.m. And people want to get back home to their families. If you did not have an opportunity to ask a question, or you did not want to ask a question for whatever reason, and this is especially important, Ricard, for the people who were not on this webinar but will be listening to it afterwards. If you have any questions, send me an email and I will answer the questions. Just make sure that you refer to this particular session that, you know, was the session in Sweden. But send to my email, Dr. Tony, D-R-T-O-N-Y, at assessments24x7.com. If you want to learn a little bit about my company, just go to www.assessments24x7.com and see what we do. I also have a website that's www.alessandra, just look at my name, alessandra.com. So either one, but I answer my emails, so if you send me an email, you will get an answer from me. Ricard, if there are no other questions.
No other questions for the moment, Tony, and I think we can wrap up the webinar here for today. So once more, thank you very much for taking the time, Tony. And while our day is ending, I know you have a full day ahead of you, so we wish you a great and sunny day on the West Coast, and hope to hear you again sometime in the future.
Well, thank you, Ricard. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your business day to attend this session. And for those who are listening to it afterwards, thank you for taking the time for doing that. This is Tony Alessandra signing off.